Report to this computer. All right. So you can see my screen, yes?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Right.
Yes po.
So we are
Yes
done,
po.
no? So finished na tayo. So we have a lot na discuss, 'di ba? Wait lang. So we are finished in terms of number 1, 'di ba? So although recording lang tayo, no? I discuss about risk and return, tama ba? So go back to our YouTube, ha? Then number 2, I discuss about bonds valuation. Again, this is also a asynchronous, no? Number 3, we are finished in terms of stocks valuation. Stocks siya na. Pangit ang aking sulat. Stocks valuation. Alright. Number 4, I discussed also about capital budgeting. Tama ba? Okay. So, capital budgeting. So, we have, I think I have 2 meetings for this one. Tama ba? Tama, no? Alright. So, we have 2 meetings. And number 5 is all about cost of capital. Alright. So, kalain mo yun, no? Kalain mo yun, Marga. Nakalima na para tayong topics. Alright. Hindi pa ako mabilis. Pabilis pa ako magturo? Hindi naman. Tama-tama lang.
Tama lang po, sir.
Tama lang. Okay. So, sabihin nyo, sir, naka-5 topic na kayo. 5 topics na tayo. Alright. Sige. Thank you, Marga. Okay. So, number 6. So, malamang ito yung coverage natin for midterm. Okay. So, next week yung midterm natin. Ang ano pa yung mga discussions pa? So, we will discuss pa about capital structure. Ano tingnan? Hindi ko magana yung aking capital structure. Number 7, I will discuss about dividend policy. Number 8, I will discuss about merger. Wait lang. Dividend policy, capital structure. Yan, merger. Alright, merger and consolidation. So, yan yung ating nasa, malapit na pala tayo, no? So, we have 3 meetings, 3 subjects na lang. Sige nga, check ko nga ulit. Baka may nakaligtaan ako. Tama ba? Ay, mali. Wala. Valid name. Gmail Lopez embedded. Yun nga eh. Bakit? Lagi tayo dyan. Nilalak ba to? Lagi tayo dyan. Ganun. Gmail Lopez embedded.
Sir, kulang po ata ng N, yung J-man nyo po.
Hindi, tama yan.
Okay po.
Oo. Last one. Tayo, baka nakalak na ako. Nalalak ba to?
Hindi ko lang po sure, sir.
Tayo dyan. Check na naman yung password ko eh. Gmail. Tama naman. Sembeda.edu.ph. Wala talaga. Anyway. Kalimutan ko yung password. Password ko dito. Anyway, sige. Yun lang naman yung password ko eh, no? Talagang, hindi, patay tayo pag hindi ko ito na ano. Ayan, ay.
Or minsan po nalalak yan. Sa akin po na-try ko na po mag-ganyan after an hour ko po tinry, tapos gumana po yung password.
Gumana na.
Off after an hour. Try nyo po maya-maya.
Yun ako lang talking, baka mali yung...
Sir, baka naka-caps lock po, sir.
Nga, baka caps lock na. Titignan ko yung sino sa akin ni Miss Jackie. Kailangan ko kasi makapasok eh. Okay, try ko to. Yun. Tama nga, naka-caps lock nga. Thank you. Alright, so tignan ko kung meron tayo nakaligtaan. Alright, so we are done with this one, di ba? List and return, bonds, stocks, tapos na. Cost of capital ngayon. Capital budgeting, tapos na tayo. Okay? Yan. Leverage pa pala. Sorry, tama. Sorry, we will discuss pa pala leverage. Sorry. So we will discuss about, so we have number, okay, 6 capital structure. After that, number 7, number 8 to, no? So number 8 ito, number 9, number 7 is I will discuss about operating leverage, financial leverage, saka total leverage. Yan. Cash break even pa pala. Okay? Then, okay. Then dividend policy merger. Ayun. So at least we are done with 4. So I will discuss today about cost of capital. Yan. So then midterm tayo next week. Then I will give quiz para sort of ano lang. Monday quiz tayo. We will not meet. Okay. Then we will meet on Wednesday for a review. Then Thursday is your exam. Okay. Then after that is, ito na, I will discuss about capital structure, operating leverage, dividend policy, saka. Hindi naman tayo bitin, diba? Anyway, sige. Alright. Yan. Today, I will discuss about cost of capital. Okay? Alright. Remember pa ba yung ating discussion last time? Naalala nyo ba yung minimum required rate of return? Isa, Bruce. Diba? Naalala pa ba yung minimum required rate of return? Correct? Kalimutan na. Diba, Marga? Remember pa ba minimum required rate of return? Yes or no? Diba, ito yung ginagamit nating percentage when we prepare present value factor. Naalala pa ba to? Yes or no? Naririnig ba ako, class? Hello? Hi. Mel?
Hello. Yes po, sir.
Naririnig ba ako? Okay. Wala kasi sa akin ano. Alright. Naalala pa ba yung ating minimum required rate of return? Take note ha, we discussed this in the 2 meetings. Tama ba, Bea? April? Bakit kaya yung mga tinatanong?
Opo.
Alright. Unless hindi niyo natandaan yung aking discussion about the 12% or 15%. Kumukuha ng tubig. Okay, sige. Pero sige nga, thumbs up nga if you remember pa about the minimum required rate of return. Kasi pag hindi, babalik tayo. Okay, sige, Francis. Nakakamali ka lang. How about the others? All right. Sana naalala niyo pa din, 'di ba? 'Di ba? I devoted 2 meetings for capital budgeting. 'Di ba? Naalala niyo ba yung 12% minimum required rate of return? Usually 12% pa nga tayo. Then we compare the IRR with the minimum required rate of return. Yes, very good. At least naalala niyo pa. Anong tawag doon? That's the minimum required rate of return or your cost of capital. Hoy, ba't ayaw sumulat? That's your cost of capital. Ngayon, ang gagawin natin is, saan ba nanggaling yung percentage na yung 12% na yun? Yan ang ating aalamin ngayon, no? Okay. Nasaan ba? Saan ba galing yung 12% or 11% or 10%? Alright. So meaning, when you say about cost of capital, it is the rate of return necessary to maintain the market value of the firm price of the firm's stocks. All right, take note of this one. When you say about cost of capital, the rate of return necessary to maintain the market value of the firm or the price of the firm's stocks, that's basically your cost of capital. So meaning, managers must know how the cost of capital, or it is also known as the minimum required rate of return. Alam nyo ba sa ibang libro, ang tawag dito sa minimum required rate of return is, of course, your cost of capital. Tayo sumulat. So you have your cost of capital. Wala lang, ayaw sumulat. So you have your cost of capital. Ano ba nangyari dito sa aking ano? Wala lang, wait lang. Ayaw gumana ng aking okay. Diba? It is also known as cost of capital or the minimum required rate of return, or it is the hurdle rate. Alright. Hurdle rate. Okay, wait lang ha. Yan ako to. Gagawin restart ko lang. Yan. So basically, it is your cost of capital. Ay, nako. Anyway, sige, sorry. Hindi ko nagagamitin. Hindi lang gumagana rin. Alright, so it is basically your cost of capital or the minimum required rate of return. Alright. So, di ba, again, as you notice, in terms of the cost of capital, we use the percentage in our capital budgeting. Tama ba? Naalala pa ba? Alright. Number 2, okay, we will establish later about the optimal capital structure. Yes. Number 3, kayo ba ay nag-FAR na? Kayo ba ay nag-bonds payable na? Kayo ba ay nag-investment in bonds? Done already? Alright, tama ba? Leasing, no? You compute for the present value. Yes, Isabel, Marga, di ba? Ito yung ginagamit natin na percentage that is basically called minimum required rate of return or your cost of capital. Alright. So, saan ba nagsimula yan? No? So, the cost of capital is basically the weighted average cost of capital or the weighted average of the capital components. From the word itself, weighted average cost of capital, that is basically your cost of debt, all right? Cost of preferred stock, okay? Cost of common stock, ngayon ay tawag dito ay ordinary shares, di ba? Ay, nako, ay talaga. And also, you have your cost of retained earnings. That is basically your cost of capital. All right. Again, pag sinabing cost of capital, that's your cost of debt, cost of preferred stock, cost of common, and cost of retained earnings. Ba't ayaw sumulat? Ba't ayaw sumulat to? Sira ka agad to. Grabe naman, nakabili ko lang. Ganito siya, oh. Tapos parang tablet. Sira agad. Diba? Ayaw sumulat, oh. J-Man. Anyway. Alright, sige. So, meaning, pag sinabing cost of capital, okay, so the user's point of view is that amount paid to suppliers of capital for the privilege of using their funds. Yes, that is your cost of capital. Okay, user's point of view is that amount paid to suppliers of capital for the privilege of using your funds. Number 2, when you say about cost of capital, it is investors' point of view wherein, diba? The return generated and obtained from the users of capital. Yes. All right. Pag sinabi din cost of capital, it is basically the point of view. Wait lang ha. Alright, wait lang. Someone's messaging. Off pa lang. Alright, yan. So basically, that's the cost of capital, no? So users' point of view, the amount paid to suppliers of capital for the privilege of using their funds. Investors naman, is point of view is the return generated and obtained from the users of capital. And the business point of view is cost of doing business from using your capital. Okay? And return generated for employing your capital. That is basically your cost of capital. Very important here is iba-iba yan, no? If it is a user's point of view, or if it is an investor's point of view, or it is a business point of view. Okay, all right. So meaning, how do we compute for your individual cost of capital? Di ba remember kanina ang sabi ko, the cost of capital is basically your cost of debt, cost of equity, which is your cost of preference shares, cost of common shares or ordinary shares, cost of retained earnings, di ba? And yan, so apat, no? But now, no, ang ginawa ko dito is I just have KI. Ano yung KI? KI is the before tax cost of debt. Ala, siraan ata to. So you have the cost of debt. All right, and also you have KD. Hindi siya Kevin Durant. KD here is basically, gumagana na. KI is, take note of this one. When you want to compute for the cost of debt, it should be after tax cost of debt. All right. Take note of this one. When you compute for the cost of debt, it should be after tax cost of debt. Sige nga. What is the reason why the cost of debt should be after tax? Anyone? Any volunteer? April. Why is it that when we compute for the cost of debt, it should be after tax cost of debt? What do you think is the reason?
Try lang.
Wala.
Para po malaman natin kung magsusuffice ba yung meron tayo sa ngayon dun sa debt po natin. Like, kung magsusuffice po after tax po. Kasi po, hindi naman po pwede na malilay po yung for taxes natin kasi duty po natin yung to pay our tax.
Alright. Pwede rin? Okay. Pwede. Thank you, April. Okay. Alright. Okay. Anyone? One more. What is the reason why it should be after tax when you say about cost of debt? Si Russell Atus. Why is it that in computing for the cost of capital, diba, it should be after tax cost of debt? Sige, go.
Siguro po kasi kailangan mo na bayaran yung liabilities bago bayaran yung...
Okay, kailangan muna natin bayaran yung liabilities. Alright, pwede din. Alright, okay, sige. The reason why, the reason why the cost of capital should be after tax cost of debt because we have an interest. Tama ba? When you pay for cost for debt, we will pay for an interest, correct? If you will pay for an interest, diba? Interest is, of course, part of our income statement. Tama ba? Yes. That income statement, it is a deduction to our sales, correct? Diba? Sales minus cost of goods sold, you have gross profit, then you have your expenses, diba? You have your earnings before interest and taxes, and we have here interest. Tama ba? And after that, it is now subject for earnings before tax. And we have your tax. Ano nangyari? The interest is subject for tax. You get my point ba? Yes or no?
Yes po.
All right. That is the reason why when you compute for the cost of debt, it should be after tax cost of debt. Again, it should be after tax cost of debt. All right. Please remind me, Juan, na. Siguro by tomorrow na, para by this weekend, I will give you assignment. You will compute for capital budgeting, parang a sort of review. Okay? Then don't worry, I will give you naman the answer. Alright, sige. Remind me na lang, Juan, ha? Okay. Alright. That's why KD or the cost of debt should be, or it should be after tax cost of debt. Take note, ha? Cost of preferred stocks, cost of retained earnings, and the cost of equity. Alright. How about this one? If the cost of debt is basically subject for tax and it is to be computed after tax cost of debt, how about the cost of preferred, cost of retained, and the cost of equity or external equity? Yan ba ay dapat ay after tax cost of preferred stock, after tax cost of retained earnings, or after tax cost of equity? Anyone? All right, si ano, I will call si Rob Mendoza. Is the cost of preference shares is the cost of retained earnings, and the cost of equity is to be subject to tax, or we will compute that in terms of after tax cost of preference shares, after tax cost of retained earnings, or after tax cost of external equity, or the cost of the new ordinary shares or common stocks.
Yung ano po, i-compute sa kung
Yes.
sa after tax or sa ano po,
Yes.
sir?
Yes.
Sir, sorry po, sir, alin po yun ulit yung i-compute? Yung
Yeah.
alin po yung
The
i-compute?
cost of preference shares, the cost of retained, and the cost of common shares. Since the cost of debt is, we will compute for the tax, the tax effect of this one. How about the cost of equity? Is it we compute for the after tax cost of preferred, cost of retained earnings, cost of equity? Like the cost of debt?
After tax, di ba yung NIAT? After net income after tax.
That's my question. My question here is, if the cost of preference shares, cost of retained earnings, or the cost of equity is subject for tax, like the cost of debt, di ba? We compute for the cost of debt before tax. Pero hindi yan ang
Opo.
answer. Ang answer natin is this one, because after tax cost of debt. My question here, how about the equity? Subject pa ba yan sa tax?
Opo, di ba, sir? Opo, subject pa sa
Why?
tax, sir.
Sige, bakit? Ano ba yung subject for tax? Di ba? Kasi ito kasi ay the interest expense is basically part of our income statement. Tama ba? How about the preference shares, retained, and external? Ano ba ang kinukuha dito? Di ba? Dividends. Correct?
Kaya subject pa siya, sir, sa tax kasi sa
Yes. Is
dividends.
ba subject for tax? Oh, kayo ba ay nag-tax na?
Ako po,
Yes.
sir, hindi pa po.
Hindi pa. Okay, okay lang. Take note of this one. Cost of preference shares, cost of, teka ba? Cost of retained earnings, cost of equity. Kung ano yung kinumpute mo dito, ayan na yon, no? No need to compute for the after-tax cost of preference, cost of retained earnings, and cost of equity. Kung ano yung kinumpute natin, that's now your cost of preference, cost of retained. Why? Because dividends is not part of our income statement. Diba? Meron ba tayong kinocompute na dividends sa ating income statement? Marga? Di ba wala? Noel, di ba wala? Sharina?
Yes, sir. Wala po.
Wala. That's why the cost of preference shares, the cost of retained earnings, and the cost of equity, no? We will not record, or we will not multiply it with what do you call that? We will not record it as parang subject for tax. So kung ano yung na-compute na natin in terms of that one, so yun na yun, no? So yun na yun. So meaning the cost of equity there, the cost of retained earnings, the cost of preference shares, yun na yun, no? So yun na yung computations natin. No need to compute for our tax. Alright. So yan ang ibig sabihin, na. Alright. And after that, we will now compute for the cost of overall cost of capital. All right, or the weighted average cost of capital. Okay, so we will compute now for that one. Huh? The firm's overall cost of capital or the weighted average cost of capital. All right, so we will discuss naman yan one by one. All right, sige. So what do you mean of cost of debt? All right, so cost of debt or the before tax of debt can be found by determining the internal rate of return. So number 1 tayo, ha? Okay, gumagana na. Buti gumagana na. So we have now cost of debt. All right, so the formula may be used for approximating yield to maturity on a bond. All right, so very important here is to compute for approximating yield. Take note of this formula. Medyo nakakahilo lang, di ba? You have your cost of debt. Tama ba? All right. Ano yung I? I here is your interest. All right. M here, ano yung M? It is usually the par value. Usually, it is a 1,000 bonds. All right. V. What is V? V here, take note of the formula, ha? V here is the proceeds. How about N? Ang N dito ay terms of bonds. All right, terms of bonds. All right. Yan. Ito same lang, ha, same. And 2 here is constant. Yung 2 dito ay constant. Don't worry, okay? Again, the I here is an interest. All right, M here is the par value. Then V here is the proceeds of the bonds. N is the terms of the bonds. And 2 is constant. Don't worry, ito lang naman yun. All right. Again, I is the annual interest payment in dollars or in peso. Okay, wala pala dito. Sorry, nag-run out ko sa amin. Okay, okay. Dito ba si Marga? M is the par value, usually 1,000 per bond. Alright, so 1,000 per bond. V naman is the value or the net proceeds from the sale of the bond. And N naman is the term of the bond. So, yan ha. Diba, napakadali lang naman napakadali lang naman i-memorize because you have here M minus V. Okay? Yan na naman. M minus B naman is also M plus V. Ano nangyari sa aking ballpen? Yan, M plus V. Alright. Okay? So, take note of this one. Cost of debt tayo. Since the interest payment here are tax deductible, the cost of debt must be stated on an after-tax basis. So, after-tax cost of debt, again, take note of this one. It should be what? It should be after-tax cost of debt. All right. Yan. It should be after-tax cost of debt. So, KI, before tax cost of debt, and you have T, and you have here your tax rate. All right. Okay. All right. So for example tayo, no? Assume that Carter Company issues a 1,008% 20-year bond with net proceeds are 940. Tax rate is 40%. Then before tax cost of debt is what? Okay. Take note of this formula. I plus M minus V. Diba? Ito yung formula natin. So, KI here, of course, saan nakuha ang 80 pesos? Saan nakuha to? 1,000 times 8% times 12 over 12. Saan nanggaling yung 1,000? Diba sabi ko, it is the par value, usually 1,000 bonds. Saan nanggaling yung 940? Dito siya galing ha, yung 940 dito, meaning given naman siya. Then, you divide it by 20. Saan naman galing yung 20? The 20 here is basically the N or the terms of the bonds. Gawin nyo class ha, 1,000 minus 940 divided by 20. Then, plus 80. Okay. Hindi pwedeng add nyo muna tapos divide 20. Hindi Divided by 1,000 plus 940 divide. Diba napakadali? Ito kasi minus naman ay plus. Divide to lang. How much now is your KI? Cost of debt here is at 8.56. Sige nga, if you are listening in my discussion, is the 8.56 is your cost of debt already, Bea o Kang? Bea, Nicole? Wala si Bea. How about you? Okay, go. Sige. Is the 8.56 is your cost of debt already?
No po. May tax pa po.
All right. Why?
May tax pa po.
Sino man Okay, very good, Bea. Because there is tax. Very good. So you are listening. Very good. Okay. All right. So meaning the cost of debt here is KD to be multiplied by 1 minus T. So the answer for the cost of debt is 8.56 to be multiplied by 60%. Your KD here is at 5.14%. So that's basically your cost of debt, no? After tax cost of debt. Okay, very good. All right. So any question about cost of debt, particularly in terms of your cost of liability? No question. No question, huh? All right. Next naman is all about cost of preference shares. Okay. Cost of preference shares is found by dividing the annual stock dividends, meaning ang formula niya pala ay dividend daw. Dividend. Diba yan? Ayan na naman magsulat. Dividend yan ha. Then divided by proceeds. Dividends divided by proceeds. Yan. So, dividends divide proceeds. So, ano yung formula? Yan. KP, cost of preference shares is equals to dividends divided by your proceeds. Okay. Ano nga yung sinabi sa inyo about FAR? About financial accounting and reporting? About the dividends in terms of the preference? You are only giving what? A fix, diba? Yes, tama ba? Fix lang ang ating interest. Yes. Ang ating interest sa ating preference shares is fixed. All right. Again, the formula is dividend divided by P or the proceeds. All right. Since the preferred stock dividends are not tax deductible expense, these dividends are not paid out. Yan. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. No need to compute for your tax adjustment because these dividends are paid out after tax. There are consequently no tax adjustment is required, no, in the preference shares. Anyway, yeah. All right. So with this one, no, as part of the cost of preference shares, ano nga yung formula? Dividend divided by the market price. Take note, so the formula dito ay 13. 'Diba? 13 divided by malamang 100. Alright. Kaya lang, sa 100 na yan, we will deduct 3 pesos. Alright. Take note of this one. When you say about proceeds, it should be market value less any underwriting, less any flotation, or any brokerage costs. Alright. Sir, bakit po kailangan i-deduct ang underwriting, flotation, or any other cost? Okay. Sino ba sa inyo may stocks? Okay. May stocks ka ba? As in, hindi virtual ha? Talagang totoong stocks? Wala. Wala ba sa inyo? Can you please write in the chat box? Okay. Sana meron. Alam nyo ba, pag kayo may stocks, may bayad yan sa broker. When you purchase shares of stocks, hindi yan libre. 'Di ba? 'Di ba, Glenn? Hindi yan free. You need to you need also to to pay for you need to pay for any underwriting, for any brokerage, for any flotation costs. That's the meaning of that, no? Yun yung meaning ng flotation. Because you will issue or you will purchase shares of stocks. Naintindihan mo, class? Thumbs up if yes. Okay, very good. Very good. How about the others? Okay. Naintindihan ha? Yung iba, hindi nag-thumbs up. Alright, sige. So, yan yung formula. So, again, okay. So, magkano yung ating KP? 13 divided by 97. Your cost of preference shares is at 13.4%. Sige nga, if you are listening talaga, si Noel Domingo, is the 13.4% is your answer already? Or we will compute for tax pa?
That's the answer na po already, sir, because
Why?
stock dividends are not tax deductible po.
Very good, Noel. The 13.4 is already your answer. No need to compute for tax or the net of tax. Very good, Noel. All right, yan. So you have 13.4. So we are done of cost of debt, cost of preference shares. Next naman is all about your cost of equity. All right. Number 1 here is Gordon's growth model. Number 2 here is capital asset pricing model. So I will not discuss number 3, only na 1 and 2. Okay. Yung number 2, if you will listen or if you listen to my discussion, to my recording sa risk and return, you can be able to identify the capital asset pricing model. Naalala pa ba? Sino bang nakapanood noon? Sino bang nakaalala about capital asset pricing model? Hopefully kayo ha. Hopefully nanood kayo ha. Punta kayo doon sa recording ko about risk and return. You will notice about the capital asset pricing model. Okay? Okay. So again, 1 into lang tayo. Alright. Take note of your cost of equity formula. Yan. Parang same lang siya kanina, no? Yes, same lang. Pero ito ay, kakaiba dito ay dividend in year 1. Okay. Then you divide it by the proceeds, then G. Ano yung G? Yan ba yung lagi yung sinasabi? Diba? Naalala ko yung mga staff ko sa Strive saka sa Advance, no? Sabi sa akin, Sir, G na ba tayo? Sabi ko, ano yung G? Tapos ulit, G na ba? Ano G? Ito pala, go. Ano? Diba? Mga talagang nagpapauso kayo ng mga terms, no? Tama ba? Tama ba, Isa? G na, G. Yung pala, go. Okay, go na. Yung ba yun? Yung ba yung G is go? Hindi, G here is the growth rate. Yan. G here is the growth rate. All right. What is the reason why that in terms of cost of equity, by the way, cost of equity here, we are referring to ordinary shares. Ito na naman. Ang problema ng aking pen. We are referring to ordinary shares. All right, yan. So, what is the reason why? Sige nga. What is the reason why that we need to have G or growth rate in the cost of equity? And why we need to have dividend next year? Go back to your discussion in your FAR or Financial Accounting and Reporting. Ano ba ang sinabi sa inyo about this one, about the ordinary shares? Si ano na, sige, I will call you. Si Maria Cristina San Juan. Ano bang sinabi sa inyo about the equity? Sige.
Yung po, sir. As per growth rate po ba?
Yes. Hindi, bakit may growth rate ang cost of ordinary shares?
Due to changes po. The changes in the period of time po.
Yes. Yes, pwede. Pero bakit yung preference shares walang growth rate? 'Di ba? Pare-parehas lang naman tayong equity eh. Preference shares ako, common shares ako. Ba't wala akong G? Yan.
Kasi po, holder po sila ng fixed rate sa dividend.
Because the preference are entitled only for fixed, yes? Malapit na. Tama yan. It is for the preference. That's why you have no growth rate. Very good, no? But how about in terms of common shares? Ba't naman siya may growth rate? Alright, sige. Ano ba ang sabi sa inyo sa Financial Accounting and Reporting? Kanino ba ang stockholders' equity? Preference shares or ordinary shares? Oh,
Ordinary shares po.
shares. Sino ba ang may kakayahan na mag-vote? Sino ba ang may kakayahan? Sino ba yung may voting shares? Ay may voting rights? Preference or ordinary?
Ordinary shareholders.
Yes, very good. Sino ba yung may kakayahan na bumili ng bagong shares? Preemptive rights, 'di ba? Ordinary shares. Very good, Isabel. Okay, sino ba yung pwedeng ma-elect as board of directors, 'di ba? Ordinary shares. So meaning the reason why you have G, okay? Go na, or growth rate is only the ordinary shares. Kasi ang korporasyon ay belongs to the ordinary shareholders. That is the reason why you have here your growth rate. Naiintindihan ba ako, class?
Yes po.
All right, very good. So after that, we now compute for the cost of equity. Let's say you have 40 pesos as the market price, and you have 4 pesos as the dividend, and you have growth rate of 6%. Napakadali. Just have 4 divided by 40 plus 6%, you have 16%. By the way pala, class, babalik lang ako ha. By the way please please remember this one 13.4. That is basically the cost of preference shares. Kasi mamaya when we are now in cost of capital, no, very relevant yan. And also please take note of this also one, 5.14. That's the cost of debt, no. Okay, again 5.14 for the cost of debt, then preference shares of 13.4. Please remember that, no. All right, then also you have the cost of equity of, please remember, also 16%. All right, yan. Please remember 16%, but it is basically without a flotation cost. Walang flotation cost. All right. Sige, later kung bakit. And after that, what if naman you have a flotation cost? Again, it is to be deducted if you have a flotation cost. All right. Underwriting costs or underpricing costs or brokerage costs. Alright, ano nga yung ibig sabihin kung bakit kailangan i-deduct? No? Bakit kailangan i-deduct ang flotation cost? Elijah Reyes. If you're listening, what is the reason why you should deduct flotation costs in the proceeds? Because of wala. Carl,
Hello po.
okay, go. Sige, go.
Kasi po, kinocompute po siya para makuha yung net proceeds po. Nakakapagpababa po siya ng value.
Yes,
Kasi additional cost po siya.
yes, but bakit may cost? Tama naman, bakit may cost? Ba't kailangan mo i-deduct sa proceeds? Tama naman, because of you are ano ba sinabi ko kanina? Because you are issuing shares. Tama ba? The reason why you have flotation costs, the reason why you have underwriting costs, you have underpricing costs, because you are issuing shares of stocks. Tama ba, Elijah? Yan yung reason kung bakit you have shares or it is to be deducted of your flotations. Okay? Naintindihan ba? Hello? Elijah, naintindihan ba ako?
Yes po.
Alright, sige. So, kung may flotation cost, paano yan? Yan. Okay. I-deduct mo lang yung 0.10. So, plus 6%. Tandaan to ha. You have 17.11. The 17.11 here is basically what? The cost of equity. Kanina, di ba? 16% kung walang flotation cost. Kung wala palang flotation cost, we have 16%. Anong nangyari? Tama yung sinabi ni Elijah, no? That if you have a flotation cost, you will increase your cost of equity to 17.11. Diba? Very good, Elijah. Okay? Alright. Ito ba ay naalala pa? Hopefully, yes. Sino ba ang nakapanood ng aking video about risk and return? Something nasa last part or hindi pa ninyo pa napapanood? Anyone? Wala pa ata no? Wala. Binibigyan ng time. Joke lang. Hindi, siyempre, basically ito lang, I make to the point na ginawa ko lahat, no? Alright. Sige nga, sino nakapanood ng aking video about the risk and return? Okay. May nag-thumbs up. Sino to? Si Rob. Ano ba yung sinabi ko about the risk and return? Okay.
Yung mga natandaan ko po dun sa sinabi niyo dun sa video, sir, na basta sinabi niyo na mataas yung risk, syempre po mataas din yung return.
Very
Tapos naka-align din dun yung mga model katulad nung sa pag yung beta o yung coefficient. Tapos yung sa isa pa po, yung unang model, standard deviation. Ayun. Pag mataas din po yun, lahat po sila, pati risk, pati yung return. Mataas din po.
Very good, Rob. 'Di ba? Naalala mo yung Rob doon? Na-discuss ako doon about beta.
Opo.
Ito na 'yon. 'Di ba? Beta here is basically your CAPM model, your capital asset pricing model. So yung mga hindi pa, by the way please watch that kasi it is part of our exam, no? Nandoon na yung very good, Rob, no? At least naintindihan mo. Alright, 'di ba? We discussed there also about the two kinds of risk. Systematic risk and unsystematic risk. Tama ba? When you say about systematic risk, it is a market-related, non-diversifiable, non-controllable, meaning it will affect your stocks. No? Pandemic, di ba? Interest rates, inflation. You have no control over that systematic. And also you have unsystematic risk or it is unique to you, no? In your company. Namatay yung inyong CEO, nagwelga yung mga empleyado nyo, may redundant sa work mo, yan. So, yan yung risk involved. In terms of this CAPM approach, no, we will compute for the cost of equity using what? Using the systematic or non-diversifiable or non-controllable risk. Bakit? Kasi nga, hindi mo yan makokontrol. Hindi mo nakokontrol ang risk na yan. So, we will compute for the cost of equity, for the cost of or for the return of it. Okay? Pag halimbawa, hindi niyo pa siya napapakinggan or napapanood. All right, so go back na lang to our video, risk and return, and you will encounter this one, no? It is basically cost of equity is your risk-free rate, then beta, then RM is the risk premium, RF naman is risk-free rate. Okay? Yan. So I will not elaborate this much more kasi ito ay na-discuss further in the risk and return. So hopefully you have time to do that because it is part of your exam. No? All right. So it is the formula. So RF beta, okay, just have ano lang, parang ilagay mo lang yung 7% is the risk-free rate. Then beta is 1.5, 13 is the risk premium. Then 7, meaning you have a CAPM model or CAP or the cost of equity of 16%. All right, so you have a 16%. Ano nga yung sinabi? Very good, Rob, no? Higher risk, higher return. Ito na naman. Anyway. Basta go back na lang to our discussion. And then, babatrip ako sa aking, ano ngayon, sa aking ito. Ayaw magsulat. Anyway, yan. So 16% here is the cost of common can be viewed as consisting of a 7% risk-free plus a 9% risk premium. Yan. Again, it is more on systematic risk, not unsystematic risk. All right. Sige. Cost of equity. I will not discuss it anymore. No? All right. Next naman is all about your cost of retained. Take note of the cost of retained earnings. Ang sabi, the cost of retained earnings daw is the same as cost of common shares. So meaning, sir, ang formula natin kanina na D1 divided by proceeds plus G is the formula of KE. Yes or no? Kasi equal eh. Tapos 1 minus T. Alright. Sige ha. Is it correct? Is this the formula of KS? KS is the cost of retained earnings. Sabi, parehas daw eh. Yes or no? 1. Is this correct formula? Diba ito yung formula natin ng KE kanina? Okay, I think may nag-raise hands. Sige, si Carl.
Hindi po, sir.
Bakit?
Yung denominator po is ano po, mali po.
Why?
Dapat po value of common stock po.
What do you mean?
Dapat po value of common stock po yung denominator po.
Value of common stock. What do you mean of value of the common stock?
Yung PO po. Yung sa formula po nung ano, D1.
The formula is D1?
D1 over P0 plus G po.
Alright. Why? Very good. That's the answer. Very good. Why? Sige nga. But, okay. So meaning, ang pinapoint out mo, di ba? Ang pinapoint out mo is tatanggalin natin yung flotation cost. Tama ba? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yan yung pinapoint out mo. Correct, Carl?
Yes po.
Why? Very good. Yan ang formula lang ng KS, which is at DI divided by P. No need to deduct any flotation cost plus G. But my question here is, bakit? May flotation cost dapat eh. Di ba ang cost of equity, we will deduct for flotation. Bakit walang flotation? We will not deduct any underwriting, any flotation. Bakit? Okay, I think may nag-message din sa, sino yan? Si Isa pala, oh. Sabi ni Isa, di ba dapat siya rin mababa? Bakit? Sige nga, Isa.
Sorry lang po. Dahil po hindi naman po natin i-issue yung retained earnings po.
Very
So,
good,
hindi po
Isa.
kailangan ng flotation po.
Very good, Isabel. That's the answer. We are not issuing shares of stocks in retained earnings. Tama ba? Ano bang silbi ng retained earnings na yan? They just accumulate all our income. Tama ba? That's the reason why no need to deduct any flotation cost. The formula is only D1 divided by P plus T. Tama ka? Only the 16% is the answer for the retained earnings. Not, sorry hindi gumagana yung aking pen. Ang patrip, oh. Tignan mo. Wala, ayaw. Ayaw magsulat. Ewan ko kung bakit. Very good. Okay? Naiintindihan ba ako? Please thumbs up if yes. Alright. How about the others? Konti lang yung nag-thumbs up ha. Okay. Pero I assume naiintindihan ha. Alright. So we are done in terms of retained earnings, cost of equity, cost of common, cost of debt. We are now on our last topic, which is WACC, weighted average cost of capital. Wag na to. Ito yung mga formula kung sa mga libro, ito yung makikita nyo lagi. Wag na, napakahirap intindihin. No? Wag na yan. Ito rin yun. Wag na. Alright, ito lang yung formula niya. But na lang may nahanap akong mas madaling maintindihan. Alright, ito lang yan. No? Alright. Sir, saan po nanggaling ito? It is basically your cost structure. 30, 20, 10, 30, 10, you have 100%. Sir, ano yung 12.05, 13? Ito na yung kinumpute natin kanina na cost of capital. Ito naman ay cost structure. Alright. So after that, just multiply it. Then you have now you add all of this one. You have now your WACC, meaning 18% na ang gagamitin natin as the minimum required rate of return. Okay, para maintindihan palalo, saan ba galing to? Ito lang 'yan, ha. For example, ito yung ating stockholders equity and liability. Saan nanggaling yung percentage? By the way, pangalawang problem to ha. Kanina is another problem. Magkahiwalay. Alright. Dito siya nanggaling. 'Di ba? Ito yung ating given. 20 million, 5, 25, 50. Saan nanggaling yung percentage kanina? 20M divided by 50 divided by 50 divided by 50, 50. Ano 50? Ito. 50M, 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 50M. Ilan yung answer? 20 million divided 50M, 40%. Okay. Next, 5 million divided by 50M, you have 10%. 20 million divided by 50 million, you have 40. 5 million divided by 50, you have 10%. Nagigets ba ako? Diyan nanggaling yung capital structure na percentage. Okay. Tama ba? Yes. Alright. Next. Next naman is ito. Cost of capital. Saan nanggaling tong 5.14? 13.40, 17.11, and 16. Saan galing yan?
Yung kanina po, sir.
Yun yung kanina. Sabi ko nga, tandaan nyo yon. Kasi very important yon. We will multiply it by that. Alright. Weight times the cost of capital. Weight times cost of capital. Weight times cost of capital. Weight times cost of capital. That's now your weighted cost of capital of bonds, weighted average cost of capital of preference shares, of common stocks, and your retained earnings. After that, you will add all of this one, and you have now your weighted average cost of capital of 11.84, or it is now your 12%. Nagigets ba ako, class? Nandyan pala nanggaling ang 12% na ginamit natin kahapon at noong Monday. Yes. Saan galing? We will compute first for the cost of bonds, cost of liability, cost of preference shares, cost of the common stock or ordinary shares, cost of retained earnings. After that, we will compute for the cost structure of the book value of your bonds, preference, sorry, common stock and retained. And you have now your weights, and it is to be multiplied by the cost of equity. Ngayon ba ay naiintindihan na kung saan nanggaling yung ating minimum required rate of return? Sana maalala nyo ako pag kayo ay nasa list na. Kung tapos na kayo sa list or far, naalala ko si Sir Jayman. Kung saan nanggaling yung cost of yung minimum required rate of return, kung saan nanggaling ang hurdle rate, kung saan nanggaling ang effective rate, di ba? Yan yung mga term. Ano pa ba? Hurdle rate, cut-off rate, minimum required rate of return, or your cost of capital. I think this is the last slide, no? So, assignment nyo na lang to. Please, inform me who won, ha? Please remind me, I will upload this one. Huwag na muna ngayon. Maybe this weekend na. Para enjoy muna kayo. Baka tomorrow ko i-upload to. Okay? Unless may question pa kayo. Any questions so far? Hopefully, you learned.
Yes po.
Alright. Oras na ba? 6:05. 1 hour lang tayo. Tama ba? Yun. Okay lang. Ganun lang. Wag tayo yung napaka, no. For me, the most important for me is not kung how long you teach, no? But the more important is how you learn. Tama ba? And at the same time, pero pag online, pero pag face-to-face, kailangan talaga natin na 3 hours. Pero ngayon kasi because of the screen, tawag din, because of the online, diba? Na lang tayo, easy lang. Okay. And we have naman Canvas for asynchronous. Okay? Do you have question pa ba? If none, thank you very much and enjoy your weekend. And please study and please watch yung mga videos na sinend ko sa inyo. Kasi nandun lahat, okay? Yung inyong basic concept about capital budgeting and also cost of capital. Yan dalawa ay related. Question?
Yung for Monday's quiz po, ang coverage po is from risk and return up until capital assets po.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And yun na rin po yung coverage for the midterm exam.
Yes, correct. Parang sort of parang tawag ko. Parang review na lang, review natin.
Okay po, sir. Chat na po kayo tomorrow morning po about the power activities po.
Alright, so if none, again, thank you very much and ingat kayo sa COVID, ha. Stay negative. Okay. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po.
Good night na kaagad, Russell. Tulog ka na ba?
Thank you
Thank
po.
you. Sige, bye-bye. Ingat.